some morals in church, people say. So I'm just thinking, why can't that be aesthetic?
Half the world is non-theist, right? I mean, and one of the...
But in our culture, I guess is what you're saying. It should be in our culture.
You know, I don't. That's not. That was your thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No. One of the things that surprised me about my debate with my Carpenter was precisely. I said half the world is non-theist, and his claim was.
Non-theist?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Buddhists are non-theists. Hindus are not. They're not theists. They're not atheists, but they're not theists either. In the sense that. I'm sorry? Hindus believe in gods, right? So they're not theists.
Polytheists.
Number,
Okay, they're
number doesn't matter, it's still a theistic belief.
No, it's not.
Well, it's-
The ultimate thing that they believe in is called Brahman, which is not really God. God is actually a lower stature, which is Paramatma, I think. But yeah, it depends on the Hindu, actually.
Yeah, it depends on
But
the Buddhist.
if you go into their philosophy,
That's a different
Right. So I didn't mean to say that there's no such thing as the concept of a God with a small g, right? But just that there's no such thing as God with a capital G, right? And I'm sorry.
monotheism.
Right. So the God of monotheism does not exist in any of these cultures. So half the world, right, are not theists, and they're not worse than we are. In fact, right, as Gandhi said, when he was asked, "How do you like Western civilization?" he said, "I would like. It was a good idea. It'd be a good idea, right?" And so, so actually, surprisingly, the response to this was that Judeo-Christians are better than everybody else. Christians are better than Judeo-Christians. And evangelicals are better than Christians, and Southern Baptists are the best of all. And I was frankly dumbfounded. Southern Baptism is basically the state church of Jim Crow, and the evidence is these.
The founding statements of the Southern Baptists were that you couldn't have Christianity without slavery. From these, I looked them up right after that because I knew the Southern Baptists that he made those several of those other comments, and I thought those might have been useful. Some of those quotes from 1844 and 1845 that I read.
Right. So I guess I think that the claim isn't. I mean, the claim is demonstrated insofar as it needs to be demonstrated that you can be a non-theist and still be perfectly good as a person.
I would just like to prove it, in America.
Right. There have been some recent studies and books that people have written based upon Western culture and Western secular culture being happier
Less felons.
and
Many
being more
categories.
pluralistic. It's based on more of the European countries. But
Phil Zuckerman, Society Without God.
Yeah. What's that? I mean, I didn't read the book, but I mean, I know it's out there.
There's been
And the Southern Baptists have the highest divorce rate in the country.
Yes.
But another response to that is, I was taught that the Crusades were a great thing, and then I grew up and found out that it was just murdering a bunch of people because they weren't Catholics, because they were Muslims or Jews or whatever, and you can respond with that and say, okay, well, the Pope's ordered a bunch of people murdered because they're not Catholics. It'd be a good response, I think.
any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. I guess I'm not completely familiar with all these arguments. I was looking, would you say that there is objective morality, non-relative morality? And if so, could you outline it?
Right. So I think I did Kant already, right? So.
Recommend the book for morality.
Okay. So I did Kant already really quickly. So the idea is you have to come up with, if you're trying to explain morality, you need something that can issue commands that have nothing to do with who you are, your particular identity. So it's got to be legislated by reason alone. So Kant comes up with the categorical imperative, which, to make a long story very short, to reason contrary to a categorical imperative, to want something like to cheat somebody out of their money, to break a promise, for Kant, it's basically a rational inconsistency. So you get morality delivered out of out of pure reason, in effect, right? So the categorical imperative, what that comes up with is treat humanity, yourself and others as an end, in itself, and never as a mere means. And never as a mere means. So basically, don't use other people for your own ends, except that they have their own ends that give them value, and so on. So there's one, right? It comes from reason alone. Reason is just a feature of the universe, as it were. And so then the theistic response is, well, you have to presuppose God to get reason, and the answer is, no, you don't. Right? It doesn't help. And actually, so utilitarianism is much more empiricist. It's basically the only thing that's good is well, not necessarily the only thing that's good, but we have evidence that pleasure is good, happiness is good, enjoyment is good, having your desires satisfied is good. It's good. It's better that lives go well. Pain is bad. Frustration is bad. So you should maximize the preponderance of pleasure over pain, because you're maximizing and enjoyment over suffering and so on. Why? Just because that's what's good and that's what's bad. So it's rational to want the best. So then there's Aristotelianism, which the natural law theory comes out of Aristotelianism. It's sort of Aristotle with God added, and the basic idea is, well, because of our nature, there is a way that we can be happy. The only way we can be happy is to practice rationality excellently. That involves achieving the following virtues, right? That's the only way to be happy. Courage, justice, self-control, wisdom, and so on. And that's because of the kind of creature we are. So Aristotle was the greatest biologist before Darwin, right? And that's what was the foundation of his theory of biology. So there are a bunch. I don't mean to sort of exhaust it all. A social contract theory, posit the equal worth of persons, and then see what comes out from that. So all of those views can give you moral realism without appeal to God. So.
But I guess what you said earlier that something's not moral just because the majority of people agree it. So and that seems to be kind of contradicts some of the things you just said. Like if everybody else on earth but one person enjoyed torturing that one person, it still would be moral. You know?
Right. Well, that's an objection to utilitarianism, and the utilitarians have to come up with a solution to that. And
well, the amount of pain that the tortured person feels outweighs even the sum total of pleasure that the majority feel torturing this person.
You can't take that for granted, though. So the utilitarian has the problem that eventually, or eventually, right? If you could stop one headache or save a human life, obviously you'd save the human life. But there has to be a certain number of headaches that would outweigh the human life.
An example right now is the flooding. We're flooding farmlands of millions of farmers and putting some of them out to save the big cities of Baton Rouge and New Orleans.
Right. Well, that's true. That's utilitarian reason.
You got a question over here?
So sorry, just to finish off. So there are clearly objections to these views, and I don't deny that there are objections to these views. Adding God doesn't help you avoid any objections, and it certainly doesn't improve the theories. That's my point.
They're completely down there.
Yeah.
But if the theist starts with, you got to be good, if you take the spectrum of morals, like, does that mean pre-God is no good, or that there was a set of pre-God morals that have a bunch of different ones to own, and so which morals are post-God that belong to the God, this God or that God? And so, if pre-God which goods were pre-God versus post-God?
Well, I'm not quite sure. You must mean post-knowledge of God,
It
right?
also implies like an ownership of morals. And so therefore, what morals would be not owned versus owned by those that are claiming this God to be good?
Well, there's a distinction between knowing God and God's existence, right? So presumably on a theist view, there's nothing pre-God. So what there is pre-knowing God. So there's the debate.
In the year 2,000 years ago, there's a bunch of different gods. There's a bunch of different sets of morals.
Right. So the theist
morals come into this one that's coming out of.
Right. So the theist view is that that's not pre-God. That's just